Welcome, you evil, scaly reptiles. My name is DasTactic. This is a tutorial series for Distant Worlds 2, and we're going to be looking at the Mortalens and how to play as the Mortalens in this particular episode. So, the Mortalens are a fierce half-mammal, half-reptile race. They have extremely fast reflexes and ability that can surprise those unfamiliar with them. Easily provoked by the slightest insult, and will pursue an enemy relentlessly until they get vengeance. Mortalens are excellent warriors, the best in the known galaxy at this point in time. A pursuit that they spend much time perfecting. Their warrior code is highly developed. Mortalens consider defeating an enemy in battle as the highest possible achievement. They are widely recognised as almost certainly the best fighters in the galaxy. There we go. Right, so these guys. Think Bushido type, almost like samurai type reptiles. They're extremely, very aggressive at plus 30. So they're just a shade under the Boscarans in terms of their aggression. They're not very cautious, so they will actually they're quick to anger. They're quick to act. They're not going to sort of consider things too much. But they're very dependable, which is sort of where they differ a lot from the Boscara in that sense. The Boscara are very aggressive. They're reckless, but very unreliable. These are sort of the opposite in terms of dependability. And so I personally, when I'm playing them in the game, I don't find them that dependable, to be honest. So I'm surprised to see it's at plus 40. It doesn't act at plus 40. They will do their own thing, but I think that they're designed to be like the Bushido code of the reptilian spacefaring factions. So anyway, there we go. Reproduction rate is lowish at plus 5. Their migration tendency is 0, and the assimilation extremely resistant to assimilation. In fact, how does that compare to the Boscara? They're even worse than the Boscara. There they are. I didn't realise there was actually anyone worse than the Boscara, to be honest, in terms of being able to get them to adapt. But I guess it makes sense if they're an honour-bound, warrior faction. They're going to be very, very resistant to being taken over. So they like rocky deserts, desert savannas, and sandy deserts. They do struggle with forest and continental, and so these have got like the threshold modifier of -5 in through there, and -10 in through that side, in that way as well. The bonuses that they actually end up getting, the war weariness reduction. So natively they're just good at staying in the fight, so plus 40%. Weapons research at plus 10%. Armour research at plus 20% in through there, so lots and lots of armour and weaponry. Mining rates of plus 10, the ship manoeuvring at plus 20, the troop recovery rate of plus 20, diplomacy of -15, so they're not very diplomatic, damage control of plus 10, and ship maintenance savings of plus 10. So pretty much all about aggression and combat. Now, the starting research, if you're playing them in the pre-warp, they do have early torpedo weapons, which is good. Kinetic weapons is your railguns. Ground combat, starship manoeuvring. They've got armour plating and basic target tracking. The Mortalen tech that they get is the pulse torpedo, multi-lock sensors, and the swift vector. Now, a few of these, this is pretty underwhelming, I've got to say, in terms of special racial tech. The swift vector, especially, is something that it's a bit of ho-hum. They thrust vectors in the game, and they're just sort of like vectoring engines, which help the ship sort of manoeuvre around. They don't actually help much with actual speed or anything else. They can help a little bit with countermeasures. We'll have a look at that when we get into the actual game itself. Okay, the race victory conditions. These are the objectives that playing as a Mortalens you want to be sort of mindful of, and so have the most experienced admiral and general in the galaxy. So you want to have somebody that's used to fighting, has been in a lot of wars, and is constantly getting their experience higher and higher and higher, and so that's important for them. And they need to win at least 70% of the wars, so they actually need to come out on the winning side with those wars quite regularly. Conquer the most enemy colonies as well, so they do want to conquer colonies, not homeworlds as such. The Boscarans are sort of more about homeworlds, but these guys are more about just any colony, and vassalize the most empires in the galaxy as well. Now, getting vassalization in diplomacy is actually not easy. It takes an awful lot of pain inflicted to actually for another faction to eventually to agree to become a vassal. So that is actually something that is difficult in the game. Now, their preferred government types are just military dictatorship or feudalism. We've actually had a look at both of these in other run-throughs with different things. They don't actually have any unique tech as such or unique style. They do also have an open against, again, republic, democracy, feudalism, monarchy, and military dictatorship in through there. But it's military dictatorship and feudalism. Very similar, these two government types. Their troops are the best in the galaxy. So attack of 140 and a defense of 210. And so their actual troop, soldier for soldier, are the best. And what they actually go through there. The most liked races, the Mortalens, they slightly dislike other Mortalens. The Shandar, they don't mind, and the Securan as well. Securans, people tend to like the Securan race. I can't wait for them to come. They were one of my favourites. I've had a lot of favourites in Distant Worlds 1. Securans were one of them. Mortalens was another one. In fact, I love the Akdarian and the Boscaran so much in this game, but I haven't played as much of the Mortalen as I would normally have thought that I would have, because I was really looking forward to, before the game came out, Mortalen was the one faction I was really looking forward to playing, but in the end I found that I just loved playing these other two. So anyway, it is a cool faction though, with that sort of Bushido style, lizard style of sort of looking at what they actually then go and do. They dislike the Artuk, the Tikans, and the Boscara, and so only at -50, which is surprising actually. I thought they'd actually have more hatred for the others around the place. The Artuk are sort of like a bit of a rodent group, I think. The Tikans definitely are a rodent faction, and then the Boscara, of course, is the bugs. Okay, so next we'll just get into the game and have a look at the two different government types. And so here we are on our rocky desert planet of Labaya 1. Let's just go into Empire, Government, and we've got Military Dictatorship is what the game had chosen for us randomly. We'll go and choose Feudalism along with that one and just compare them. Okay, so Military Dictatorship is -5 compared to +10 for Feudalism. War weariness is about the same for both, so very, very similar. Counter-espionage, actually Military Dictatorship does actually close off the Empire a lot to counter-espionage. Diplomacy, got -10 for both of them. Weapons research is much higher for the military dictatorship. The troop research is much more for the feudalism. That's interesting, actually, the differences between those two. Colony happiness is bad for both. Troop recruitment rate, we've got +30, +20. Troop recovery rate, +20, +10. Troop maintenance savings, +35 and +50. So this is much more about, feudalism is going to be much more about the actual ground combat, whereas military dictatorship is going to be more about space combat. We then actually have colony corruption reduction of both -10, so not good. So they've got corruption in their society. Mining rates is +30 compared to -10. That's actually fairly cool. Again, more sort of space oriented than sort of troop oriented. The tourism income is way down though for these guys, -30. That's one of the worst I've seen. -20 still for the feudalism as well. Ship maintenance savings +35. Actually, the ship maintenance savings here of +50 is massive. That's really quite cool. Either one of these is actually a good one to choose. I think for me, it's going to come down to what specials you're going to get when you start in pre-warp. I don't tend to play the game much in pre-warp, so it's a bit new for me. But I will give information as much as I can about that one. Again, if you do have differences in what I'm sort of suggesting with the game, or if you've got a different perspective, please write a comment. It would be super valuable for everyone really to sort of get other perspectives. Facility maintenance savings of +10. Trade income is down for the military, and also all research is normal and or -5 in there for the feudalism. Now the leader terms have got 60 years followed with a coup d'état, which becomes very highly disruptive in through there. So when they do change after 60 years, it's quite dramatic, and only admirals and generals can actually take part in this particular from the leadership. For the feudalism, every 20 years or thereabouts, there's a coup d'état, and again highly disruptive, with an appointment of any new character. So they could be spies, scientists, or anything could then take over. And so the things they actually then have is they've got the improved escorts, the frigates essentially in through there, and then the shock forces. So the special forces are then going to be selectable with the military dictatorship. For the feudalism, we've got the starfighters, the zero-G combat, and the ship boarding. I still think I'd err on the side of military dictatorship, just slightly. It wouldn't really worry me whichever one I was playing, but it will play differently, whichever one you do play, just a little bit, but they're quite similar. Okay, so let's go in now and have a look at the texts and see what they've got. Right, so their texts start in torpedoes. So we go down through the torpedo line. We then go down. So we bypass level, this is 0, 1, 2. We bypass 2 and go straight to 3 with the advanced containment, which then opens up the pulse torpedo for them. Again, we're looking at pretty high sizes, like 36 and 54 for the large. So these are fairly big, but their range is very, very good. So these are long-range torpedoes. Again, with torpedo weapons, they do actually, and I will do an actual video on the differences between the different weapon types, but they do dissipate. These are sort of like is it not a phaser? Anyway, the torpedoes from Star Trek. It's an energy blast or energy ball that is fired out, and it dissipates slowly, and then slowly sort of just dissipates into nothing. And so these still have to be. You still have to close the gap to use these effectively. They work better at short range, not at long range. And so anyway, the pulse torpedo is their first one. I've got to say, most of the Mortalen techs are ho-hum, big yawn, bit boring. For such a militant faction, I'm sort of surprised that they don't actually have anything better. This is the swift acceleration. This one here is just a swift vector. The only really good thing about this one is it's size 4, and quite often you do have just a few points left over on a ship, and you're looking for something to squeeze into it, and quite often the thrust vectors, like this is your, you've got a multi-vector in through there, which is size 6. This one up through here, the single vector, actually that's only size 4. But all this one really does essentially is just give it sideways movement for the ships. It allows them to be more maneuverable, and that can be important for larger ships, but usually the small ships can do that themselves anyway, even if they don't actually have any sort of thrust vectoring on them. It's a technology that is not really, it's not even a nice to have. If you've got it, you've got it. It just fills the gap. If you've got 5 or 6 points left over with your design, and you haven't got one on your ship, and you've got space for one, you throw it in because you've got nothing else to do. They're not of any great value, I find anyway. Again, if you disagree, please write a comment as to why thrust vectors are so useful, because I don't think that they are at all. I think that they're one of those sorts of things. I hope that they do, at some point, get some sort of love, because that would be fairly cool. Now, this is actually not too bad. This is the multi-lock sensors, and what this one does is it improves our targeting. And so we also have so basically the targeting is plus 20%. So again, aggression rather than protection. I prefer to err on the side of countermeasures, which is the ones down through here. So you get countermeasures plus 15. At the same rating, this will have targeting of plus 15. So it just means that you're going to actually be able to target the enemy a little bit more effectively, which means that you'll get a little bit more shots in than what the enemy will. Also, you then bypass the next one and go straight for this one through here, where it's plus 30, as opposed to the fleet targeting that they have of, actually that's an extra one there. Fleet targeting is different. This one here goes to plus 20, which then matches that one, which means that this one should then match that one through there. Yeah, that's fine. So you do get ahead a little bit. These are really only suitable for ships that are larger, like destroyers or larger. You tend to be wanting to have your countermeasures on the smaller ships. And so, again, these will sort of come into their own in the mid-game, where you do have destroyers and cruisers and things like that around the place, which is, I think, when the Mortalens really sort of start to hit their straps. What else? That's all we've really got in that sort of terms. Let's have a quick look at their ships. Have we already gone past the ships? I think we may have. Just go back up. Have a bit of a look and see if we can find them in here. Okay, so let's just have a quick look. And the thing, if you've been looking at the other things, we have a quick look to see where the, how many large versus small type weapons we're looking at, and also how many hangar bays we get. So the small ones in through there. Compare this to the Harkonish, for example. The Harkonish has only got one large weapon mount. This one's got 2. Compare that to the Boscarans, and the Boscarans have got 2 as well, I think, 2 large from memory. The humans have got 1 large, one standard. So you get a bit of a feel for the way things actually do work, and then we'll then start to sort of design some of these. So 2 large on the escorts. On the system patrol ships, we've got 3 large, 2 standard, or 2 sort of smallish. That'll be interesting to see how that one does work. The destroyers are 4 and 3, so we're getting a lot of weaponry on these ships, which is pretty cool. Multi-role starships is our cruisers. We're getting 5 and 7. This can be decked out in all sorts of different ways. If we can find something that's a bit smaller to actually sort of put on these, it can be very, 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 very useful. And then we go to, in fact, we have, at that point, we get 1 hangar. Destroyers, we do get a hangar on a destroyer, just a single hangar. So it's maybe tempting to sort of put in like mini carriers at that point, but nothing like the Actarians. So maybe at that stage you could actually change your destroyers into a mini carrier. I don't think the improved destroyers will have anything more than just 1. Yeah, they've all just got 1. That's fine. So that may be an option, to go across, get your destroyers, and then come down into your improved destroyers, and then look at making a mini carrier or something out of those. But again, you're not going to be able to compete. If you're going up against the Actarians, just try to find point defence. That would be the way to handle them. And then we come back out from here. The dedicated carriers have only got 4 hangars, so fairly minimal with what they actually have on the actual carriers. The cruisers back and through here, though, are going to have like a lot of extra firepower. And so I think really the goal here, they've only got like 1 hangar on these other ships as well. These cruisers are still only 1 hangar. We have a look down at the big capital ships. 10 and 10. This is good. This is sort of competing for the same sort of amounts of weapons that the Boscarans have when they get to the late game. So interesting. So that is actually a very, very powerful faction. Let's go and design ourselves a few ships and well, not design, but we'll have a look and see what they end up having. So we'll just go into ship design. We'll go into add new. We'll just change this one to state ships and sort by role. Okay, so the escort. If you come in playing the pre-warp, the escort's going to be the only ship you're going to have at the start, and these are serviceable. These are actually not too bad at all. So let's have a quick look and see what you can do with these. So if we just go and manually create, a bit like the Boscarans, we've got weapons that fire from the front, and they're both large mounts. So we can actually start to deck these things out. What they miss, though, is the ability to actually have not sentinels, but the point defense. And so these again are more about doing damage, very much like the Boscaran approach for these particular sorts of ships. Now, this is where their thrust vectors may be useful. They do actually already have a plus 20% ship manoeuvring. If you do get one of their special thrust vectors on these things, it will mean that they can turn around very quickly and use the firepower that they actually have. Now, I think the benefit over the Boscaran ships is that you can actually fire pretty much both weapons at a 180-degree arc, which means that you can sort of then use railguns or something else that's not a very large size on these particular craft and make them fairly high punch factor. Let's actually go back and cancel that one. And then once you get that one, you can then sort of go through and start to get the, where is it? The patrol escorts. Let's have a bit of a look at that one through there. This one's only still got the 2 weapon slots, but it'll have more engines, so this will be much, much faster. So if we just go and have a bit of a look, this one's got the same deal in through here, but with better engines. So this would be good as well, just to cause damage. This is like a very much like the Boscaran approach for this particular ship, whereas the Boscarans do it with all of their ships. The Mortalens will be a bit more nuanced, a bit quicker. So anyway, these are all about damage. The heavies, let's have a look and see what they're like. The heavy escorts. And so now we actually have another 270 slot at the top, which is a medium, but that would really be used for point defense. And you've still got the same sort of deal in the middle there. Even though it's showing 5, you don't actually have 5 engine slots. I think you've only got 4, I think, for this one. If we just go back and cancel that one and then just go add new and click on heavy escort, you only have access to 4 engines, not the 5. And so that's actually reasonable as well to actually get the point defense. That does make this ship much, much more usable to have some sort of sentinel beam on top. It's only if something gets right in behind it that it's got problems. And so I think that was probably the pick of the escorts. is the heavy escort. It's some funny because some of the other factions, the pick is actually the patrol escort, but in this case, having that extra weapon slot on top for the point defence would actually be I think give that the slight benefit. Let's have a quick look at the frigates. And these have got 3 and 2. Now we're starting to talk about heavy firepower. So we can just go into this one through this side. And so we've got like a number of heavy slots pointing to the front, and then we've got a couple that point backwards. Now, this again is one of these sort of weird things where where do we put our point defence? It's really got to go at the back. But what sort of point defence do we use? Really, if we're making the approach, if we're sort of being aggressive, then the point defence, you'd really be wanting that to be pointing to the front. I wish that these were actually off on the broadsides, because then you could put sentinel beams on them. But at this point in time, you're probably going to have to use point defence missiles, which then go and seek down the enemy small craft. That would be the only thing I could think of doing that one. It's a bit of a wasted design because of that, the fact that they're pointing backwards. It sort of stops you from using sentinel beams on the back of these. I mean, you could technically put a sentinel beam in the middle there, but I think you'd really be wanting to, again, just have this as a fairly aggressive ship. How many? I've only got the two, like a slot there for 1 armor and 1 shield, which is fairly weak as well. Yeah, it's a hard design actually. It's funny. It may be that you actually only put missiles or torpedoes on this, and then use the missile point defense at the back there, and sort of go for more longer range. But yeah, I don't know. It's for me, it's a little bit awkward. It does have a lot more firepower. It's still a little bit awkward. Okay, that's the frigates. If we then go to the destroyers. This one here has got 4 and 3. I think actually this is the one that probably where it starts to become super useful. We do actually have, again, a point defence at the front there and 2 at the back. So we could mix and match this one up a little bit. This one actually could be viable where we've got beam defences everywhere. Beam defences are smaller. And then we've got the 4 at the front there for the big stuff. And so, again, we could sort of... This, I think, does become much more useful. You probably won't be able to deck out all of the actual turrets, but it does become much more useful there. You do actually have underneath there, you've got a hangar. So you can actually start to use this as either as a very, very strong front-facing destruction ship, or a mini carrier as well, or maybe even a combination of both. But usually it doesn't work that well when you do a combination of both. But if you actually had like the hangar plus 1 or 2 sort of concussion missiles in the early part of the game, point defense in around here, it would be a reasonable mini carrier to actually sort of just use that in that sort of capacity. So that's sort of how I'd probably look at that one through there. Let's have a quick look at the light cruiser, which now has 5 and 7. And we're now starting to get much more protection for, potentially for point defense. Point defense is something you've really got to... You should never just bypass it. It is important for the protection of your ships. It plays a big role. But this one does have a lot of firepower in the front here again. So again, these sort of ships are sort of becoming even more... I guess, in one sense, sort of even more useful, but a lot of firepower at the front. It sort of looks like the Mortalen ships are, like if we imagine the actual torpedo that they get on these ships, it means that these are ships that are just going to be facing the front, racing in fast, and trying to sort of get as close as they can to the enemy to really pummel them with those torpedoes. Maybe a few of the smaller ships with some rail guns on or something like that would be a really, really nice combination. Anyway, that is the Mortalens. I think we've done that one pretty fast, actually. I normally am a bit slower with this, but that was good. We got through the Mortalens in relatively fast pace. The Mortalens are a fun faction to play. They're, as I say, they're not my favourite faction in the game, but I do enjoy them. The ships are a little bit difficult to fix up, as you sort of saw there with the back facing of some of the areas for the point defence. But overall, it's a very, very good faction to play. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.